All right, you guys, welcome to the Tech to Titan podcast. Today we have a special guest, my hero, my backup, my when I get stuck and can't find my way out of a bottomless pit, Richard Zilka.
Hey, what's up, all?
Hey, this is one of my go-to guys. This is my opportunity to showcase my roundtable and people that help me be great. And I am so privileged that Mr. Zilka chose to speak with us and relax with us tonight. In my Tech to Titan podcast, you'll see occasionally I have special guests with me also to co-host. Usually these will be my students or people that I have business relationships with in the appliance industry. So that way we can not just hear Miss Ward's key and point of view, but those of others too. All right. So Rich, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been in the industry, and then we'll go from there.
Well, I started working for Sears in 1983. So you could do the math. That's close to 40 years.
Wow.
I've been working for many different companies, been teaching for many years, and got appliances in my blood. Might be time for an upgrade.
Awesome, man. Well, you're an awesome instructor. I can definitely vouch for that. And I've definitely appreciated the after class support also. I am
Sure.
always humbled because you, like today, when I called you about that 23-year-old KitchenAid I was going to look at. Remember when you told me that it was behind, that sometimes that defrost timer is behind that front kick plate?
Yeah.
Guess where it was? Behind the kick plate. Now, ask me as a novice what I did. Oh, I went and looked behind by the compressor. Then I looked up in the top compartment next to the thermostat, and I was like, and then I pulled up the manual again, the tech guide or the parts list, and I kept looking. I said, oh, timer bracket. Under the kick plate. So thanks again, man. And I'm always humble enough to say thank you, because what people don't understand about appliance repair, especially the newbies, is that you are always learning and you have to keep your humility. And you know, people like Richard are gracious enough to help novices such as myself. So Rich, talk to us a little bit about how did you choose appliance repair?
Well, real quick, I've been teaching for many years, and it's hard to get students and people interested in the industry. When I was in high school, a recruiter came to our school from the local tech school and said, come to our school, earn $12 an hour. That was 1980. And I $12 an hour in 1980. I was like, whoa, I'm gonna make some money here. I had no college aspirations. I couldn't wait to get out of school. So I could go learn a trade while I was in high school was perfect thing for me. So I had to get my mom to sign the paper. I said, Mom, I want to take automotive repair. And back then, gas stations stopped doing service and repair in the garages. They started going self-serve. My mom says, you ain't going to find no job. You're going to be stuck under a tree working on cars. I was like, okay, I'll take air conditioning. So down here in Florida, you know, in wintertime, nobody gets their AC fixed. You're going to be out of work in the wintertime. I'll take appliance repair, sign the paper. That's how I picked the trade.
So when you initially started your training, what were some of the stumbling blocks you personally ran into as a new tech?
Wiring diagrams and sealed system. Those were the two toughest things that I had to come across. I mean, I picked up on diagrams and thought I got them a lot more quickly than most of the people in the class, but you know, learning to troubleshoot, and you're looking at these straight lines and you go to the machine and you're like, I don't see no straight lines on the machine. I don't know where this is at. So trying to put two and two together, I understand it's not easy.
So what do you think solidified your ability to really understand wiring diagrams? Because many people struggle with schematics.
Well, just like this week, this Thanksgiving break, I'm sorry, one of my students took some diagrams home to practice them, and I tell the guys, you have to practice. And so they go home and they look at the diagram and they stare at it, And then they're like, I don't know what to do with it. And so I said, well, the first thing is pick out a part on the diagram, like, let's say he was doing a stove, pick out the surface burner. Now look at all the switches that control that surface burner, start making a list. Now pick another part of the machine and start there. Just what switches are in line with that one part. And then from there, you can start tracing circuits and then practice the troubleshooting. But you're not gonna just pick up a diagram and say, oh, I can fix this with no problem, without trying to understand what every little piece is.
Okay, so how do you feel about the electronics piece with the modern appliances and the boards and things of that nature? Do you think it's necessary for a technician to solidify their background by focusing on electronics, learning transistors, resistors, capacitors, actually on the boards?
No, power in, power out, but understanding how the board works, but not necessarily testing components on a board. I know Brandon and I did a class for TMM, and he did one for board repair, and boards are no longer available, and it might be cheaper to fix than to buy another board. Then I'm all for that. But you just need to know the board's purpose. I grew up, when I first started appliances, we didn't have computers. Everything was mechanical, timers, switches. And I remember when the boards came out in the mid to late 80s, on the washing machines and everything. And, it was a transition. But, once you get the idea of that power goes into the board and the board sends power to the part, that's the main part. The hardest thing is understanding how the sensors and stuff work by controlling those parts. That's difficult.
Okay, all right. That makes sense. Now let's talk about the theory aspect. What's your thoughts on people understanding theory so that they can properly troubleshoot? Like how the washing machine goes through certain cycles, how the airflow system is on a refrigerator. Like all these are very key in order to be a pretty solid tech, in my opinion.
I'm 100% with you. I remember when I went to school, and after I got out of basic electricity and I went to washers first, the very first assignment was sit down, turn a washing machine on, and sit there and watch it run the whole entire cycle. Then I had to write a 250-word essay. What does the machine do step by step? It fills the water, then it starts to agitate, and then the door locks. Well, whatever that sequence was, step by step by step. That's important. Like today, I had a guy at a dishwasher, and the board wasn't working. He got a new board, put it in, and as soon as he pressed start, there was a short on the board and blew the board. He called me for support. I told him, look at the board and look at the pins on the board. Where did it short? And when he looked at the short, he says, this pin, okay, what does that wire go to? He says, I don't know. I says, well, what does a dishwasher do when you first start it up? The drain pump comes on. I said, check your drain pump's not shorted, check to make sure the wiring from the board maybe didn't rub up against the metal and get cut and ground out. And he said, okay, I'll check it out. So I hit him up and I said, so what'd you find out? He says, I called tech support and they said, the drain pump motor looked like it was good, but change the drain pump, change the board, and change the touch panel. But they knew the problem was in that drain pump circuit.
Exactly.
So he came back, he says, you hit it right on the money. I got lucky, I guess.
No, that goes back to the theory. Everybody knows that when you start any dishwasher, the first thing it does is drain. And that's, what is it? It's Whirlpool. Isn't that they're the ones that have where you can disconnect a portion, leave some wires hooked up, and then once you close it, it tells you whether the board is good or the pump is good.
Well, that I haven't seen.
At the end of the day, it goes back to people really understanding the basics, because what I've seen in my personal growth is that when I go to a job now, I'm more comfortable because I understand defrost system. I understand the different systems of the refrigeration process. I know how to look at the patterns and see if it's a leak or restriction or what have you from like a pattern, things of that nature. So, I mean, people go in and they take it lightly, but in order to make money and be profitable, you don't want to just be throwing parts, because throwing parts will break you and will give you will put you in a whole totally different place. You want to understand the process and you want to understand how to troubleshoot those things. Now, in your opinion, when you look at the appliances of today, like I worked on that older one today, I was so confident when I went in there, the screws were still solid, no rust. I mean, built Ford tough. I mean, let me tell you something. I was so happy because I'm thinking this thing is 25 years old. I'm about to go in here and I need to pull out the PB blaster because I'm gonna have rust immaculate. Every mechanical piece. And this unit had R12 in it. This is how old it was. So, but we don't necessarily have that same quality of manufactured quality in the new ones. So how do you advise technicians when they walk into these places, these spaces with newer appliances?
Well, quality is a difficult word because the government keeps mandating that they become more energy efficient. They use less water, less electricity, and sometimes they're given a date that these upgrades have to be done by a specific date. So manufacturers, I remember working for, doing some work with Frigidaire and Electrolux under warranty. And for a while they had a group of engineers at refrigeration that came down here to Florida because their refrigerators had unique problems down here that they didn't have in the rest of the country because of the high humidity and moisture and stuff like that. So we had to work with them, and they even did some ride-alongs with us to see what kinds of problems they are. So sometimes, they design a product, they test it in their shops and their warehouses that they design this stuff in. Then they have certain neighborhoods that they use as test markets, people that are test markets. But then when products go to other markets, sometimes they behave differently. So talking to technicians, like we just did training the past couple of days, you got to stay up on your game. You got to go to these factory trainings. I think ASTI's coming up. Brandon and I are going to be going to ASTI. You have to do constant training. I mean, as many years as I have, I sat in on every one of the trainings I made my guys go to, so that when they're talking to me, I'm on my game. Because like you just said something about a dishwasher where you could isolate some parts and disconnect it. I've never seen that. I want to know. It's something I got to find out. I got to stay on my game.
So how do you advise? Because you have a couple of different breeds of technicians. You got the technicians that work for the corporate companies that are technicians, and some of those companies support training, some don't. Then you got the one-man shops out here. How do you recommend they stay? How can they get training, factory training? I mean, I know about MSA, I know about Encompass, Marcone, they offer some options, but how can a tech stay on top of that in order to be current and competitive in their
Well, manufacturers are not going to give it to you unless you're a factory authorized servicer. But like you said, MSA, there's another agency called PSA, Professional Servicer Association, and they have a convention. And I think United Servicer Association also has a convention. And those manufacturer trainers are at these places, and you sign up for as many as you can, and you pick the ones that you know the least about. So at least you can get some decent information, because what they charge you for those classes, it's nothing to sign up for that convention compared to the knowledge you could walk away with. Exactly. And not only that, the knowledge, but you got to walk around and you got to talk to everybody, get to know everybody. I think some of the things that led my business to its success was not always so much how I know, but it's who I know. I'm not going to say a manufacturer's name, but I got a call from a manufacturer and said, hey, listen, what zip code do you service? And I sent him a list, and I became factory authorized because I knew the guy for 25 years. And he says, you know, I'd rather deal with somebody I know
There you go.
and bring on another company I don't know. So yeah, nepotism, it's sometimes who you know, not what you know, but you have to back it up with your service and your knowledge.
Exactly. Well, I'm always preaching about relationships. I wholeheartedly agree. So in reference to if a tech is getting into the industry, and say, how do you feel about specialization? Like if a tech came in and they wanted to just work in a specific, because you know how Sears broke it down. What do they have? Kitchen, laundry, seal systems, AC.
They had all that. But you know, you limit yourself to work. If all you can do is laundry and all you want to do is washers and dryers, that's good. But now you go in someone's house and they say, can you look at my stove? I'm sorry, I don't do stoves. Then she calls somebody else, and next thing you know, that guy does laundry too. You're losing customers.
Exactly.
So you have to be diverse. Yeah, if you just do laundry and you're trying to get yourself started, you know, like you, sometimes you YouTube answers. You go to Samurai's website, you go on these forums and you look for answers. Sometimes my techs call me and ask me for help on something. I Google it and find the answer for them, where they could have done it themselves, you know?
Exactly. So that's another thing I'd like to brush on. How do you feel about the fact that we have all this at our fingertips? Like when you started, you guys had everything was by hand. You had a thick book you had to look at, or you know, you didn't have some of the resources we have. And it amazes me. You know, I did a video on my channel called Google It because
I saw that.
you know, but the reality is you have to be self-sufficient at some point. How does a technician, or like when I talk to people, you got a couple of things. First of all, they're scared to step out. They want to get an appliance repair. They're not comfortable going in people's homes, what have you. I always advise people to either get a job with a company that's going to train you and then pay you while you know, on the job, you know, or, you know, find options or go work for like these guys that flip appliances. You know, it's a lot of places that do the used appliance thing. So what's your opinion, or what do you recommend?
Well, I did a video too on Manuals Lib. You know, how to find technical information on Manuals Lib. I did also add Frigidaire, but they removed that site now. But you know, like you said, back in the day, we had to look up parts on microfiche. You know, back in 1983, when I started working for Sears, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have computers. Everything was done by phone or by fax. So, you know, part of the things I do in my class is I have students go online. I have them give me thumb drives, and I give them books and manuals, and have them use the computer or a tablet with those manuals while they're working on machines. So they get used to knowing that this information is out there, and a lot of those service manuals are out there if you know where to get it. I mean, I know you use Samurai a lot. I use Samurai. You know, Samurai is great for getting wiring diagrams and other things. You know, you come up with diagrams like, how did you get that? How'd you get that? I had to get myself you know, a subscription.
Yeah. Well, you know, the key is about resourcefulness, because I'm a firm believer that the strong will survive and the weak will fall by the wayside. And I feel like we are in a market and a time where you can really make your own way, but you can choose how you want to do it. There's nothing wrong with being a W-2. Like a W-2s get a bad rap, but the reality is if you have a plan, a lot of times your W-2 is your first investor. I'm just advising people that if you're going to step into any mechanical situation, get the hands on, even those people that want to come in and manage subcontractors. You better know what people are doing because you will be taken advantage of. Yeah. So how do you feel about, like, for instance, lately in a lot of the Facebook groups, we've been seeing a lot of people retire or get ill, sell their businesses, sell their equipment, getting out of the business. Like a lot of people are aging out. And, for me, that's interesting because in my brain, I'm like, look at all that knowledge and education. Like a guy, like if I was in those positions, I would be going to those tech lines, or I'd be in a situation where I'd be advising other technicians or younger technicians. It's very interesting. I've seen a lot of people with health challenges, which is why I'm all about health as well on my own journey. But what have you seen with as far as appliance techs and how they take care of themselves, or taking it to the next level, or aging out?
It's always been a problem that the old timers, are retiring. I mean, I heard that back in the 80s. And like I said, with the program, I only have 12, 14 students, where I used to have 25 when Pan Am and United, and Pan Am went under. I had a waiting list of people trying to get into the program. And I've never seen it, get like that since the 80s. And we cannot get enough students to train to keep up with the market. And it's not just the retiring ones. Down here in South Florida, they're constantly building new neighborhoods and new homes. We need to keep adding technicians.
Yeah.
And it's hard to find them. I need technicians for my company, and my partner, he searches Indeed, Craigslist. We'll take a maintenance guy at an apartment complex or an AC guy and train them how to work on appliances. It's hard to get them. So, I mean, I contemplated retiring one day from my teaching job, but it's also going to be detrimental to my business, because how else am I going to continue to feed my business with employees if I can't keep producing them?
So do you, what's the word I'm looking for? Let's talk about technicians' salaries and pay. Do you think it has to do with the pay scale? Do you think it has to do with just people being exposed, or why do you think that there's, because every trade seems to have that problem, whether it be plumbers, electricians, welders?
Well, I think appliance repair gets a bad rap. People hear the word appliance and they think of toasters and blenders and stuff that don't break. Air conditioning. Oh, there's big ACs, there's big money. I got employees making $60,000, $70,000 a year, on commission. And I got, and it's funny, the guys I have down south all want commission because they can see that kind of money. But the guys I have up north, like the Orlando and Tampa area, not one of them wants to go commission. Everybody wants to be hourly and wants to get that check. I guess it depends on the drive of the individual, that they really, how hungry are you? I had a student last night and I told him, I said, listen, you're going to get out how much you put in to get out. And if you want to be successful, he started his own business already. I said, you want to be successful, you have to put a drive into it. It's not going to just fall in your lap and you're going to make all this money. I mean, I know how hard you work. I'm impressed at your work ethics. I tell you, when I heard it, like tomorrow, I bet you got service calls scheduled, right?
You know it. I ain't missing a dollar.
I don't know anybody else that works on Thanksgiving running appliance calls.
Exactly. But I have a system, though. I have a system. You know, I have a structure, I have goals, and and it's very hard to keep yourself self-motivated. You know, I didn't come from an entrepreneurial background. And so everything is a learning process. But the reality is I limit my distractions, I limit the drama, because like I always say in my videos, I've made millions of dollars as a W-2 working for corporate companies. All I'm simply doing is trying to transition that, manage myself, manage my subs, and my brand. And it's a process. I make mistakes every day, but I also hold myself accountable. I am nowhere near perfect. And, and I'm humble enough to ask for help. You know this personally. I think it just really has to do, once again, with your round table and the people you surround yourself with, and I'm blessed because coming into the industry, I sought out industry leaders. I sought out people that I knew that had value, and I maintained those relationships. It's that simple.
That's important.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add? I'm going to wrap up this interview.
No, Miss Mandy, you got anything you want to add?
I'm turning it over to
Bill. I'm sitting here being a sponge. I'm like, but I will say, so I'm new to this appliance repair industry. I had no idea it existed. I was looking to exit my previous career, and just from the background of the men in my family, they've all been mechanics. So I've always worked with them growing up. So I've always fixed things. And when I was looking for an out, I was like, well, what can I do? What would I enjoy doing? And what brings value to people, right? And that led me to appliance repair. And I always had this image of the Maytag man, sitting at that counter, not getting any calls. So I'm like, well, So, but I soon learned, there's just an exorbitant amount of need for what's in nearly every apartment, condo, house, barns. I mean, appliances are everywhere. And so let me ask the question, who services these? Because they don't last forever. And so this community has just been eye-opening, and I'm learning so much from you, TMM, Master Samurai, MSA classes. I'll be at ASTI, so I'm excited to meet you guys, and everybody else is going to be there. But I did want to sort of my introduction, and Miss Ward knows about this because she's been my coach, scared me, and it didn't stop me from pursuing, pushing through. But usually when you have, you start on a Whirlpool, Samsung, Kenmore, these more like ones you can find in Home Depot and things like that. I wasn't necessarily getting those type of service calls to service those types of appliances. I was getting out the door, Liebherr, Decor, Vite. Thinking in my head, okay, these, I didn't see these as, these are not, this is not what your introduction, these aren't introductory, like you don't start reading a book before you learn your alphabet. But like you said, both of you, it's important to learn how to read a wiring diagram, and that's the ABCs. It still intimidates me. So, but I've been maybe 80% success rate so far by the grace of God. But what would you say if you're living in an area, and I'm out in the West Coast in Washington State, how would you, Richard, recommend someone approach, I guess, introducing yourself to those types of appliances that aren't necessarily manufactured here? Or maybe you're overwhelmed by what it represents because of the brand, because some of those, the components, the layout, the diagrams, they're not necessarily what I would call your introductory ones. How how would you encourage or maybe guide those new ones, us new ones, how to approach, not mastering, but learning and continuing to learn how to be successful on working on those types of appliances?
Well, as Miss Ward will tell you, that's how she's gonna make her money, because she wants to work on all them big, expensive ones that nobody else will touch.
Yeah.
Eh, to start off, you really have to start from the ground up and get those basic machines, go through those basic machines, because even though these big high-end units are intimidating, they're big, they're built into a cabinet, they're still just a refrigerator with a compressor and control and sensors and everything else.
Oh,
Into them and getting that technical information like diagnostics and stuff like that. But the one thing is you got to reach out and you got to talk to these people. If you're going to be at ASTI, you might see some of these people, Decor there and LeBaire there, and just say, hey man, do you got any manuals? Do you got anything? Do you got, do you got information? And videos are the only thing that's going to help you if you don't have access to it. Some of these companies like Warren Tech and I'm just throwing them out there, I don't know if they do it, but some of them actually have a tech support built in. So if they send you calls, they also have the ability to give you some technical advice or technical support when you're working on them. But you also have to worry about, there's a lot out there that people complain they don't get paid from them, and all the problems they have with them. But going back to starting from the ground up and just take a simple refrigerator and tear it apart. Next thing you know, you want to get yourself, a KitchenAid or Electrolux that's got a board in it, and tear it apart and learn all the different pieces and the sensors and try to figure out how they work. So once you've seen that, don't get intimidated by these bigger machines, these high-end machines. Look at them as they're just another machine that has a compressor and a seal. They have thermistors just like the cheap ones. It's just gotta be a little more careful when you work on them, and gotta take a little more time to feel yourself around the machine and get comfortable with it.
Okay.
I hope I answered your question.
No, that's good advice. I don't tend to, I have called a couple of tech service lines. Sometimes they're not so welcoming, but I get it. They probably get a lot of calls, and they just talking to people that, hey, just tell me the answer, and they don't, they want to know that what you're doing, basically, like the theory, right? So they want you to tell them what you've done so far. And so, but yeah, probably reaching out more to those, and just the overall, just the growth trajectory. So like you said, it's who you know. So got to work on those relationships and, keep, just keep at it.
Well, just to add on that question that you asked and what you said, when you call, I know Sub-Zero pretty much helps anybody out. But some of these other companies, if you do call them and they want to know like what you've done so far, what they're asking is, did you do the basics? And so, did you check to make sure the evaporator wasn't frozen over for defrost problem? Did you see if it was partially frozen like a sealed system problem? Did you do amperage on the compressor? Did you check pressures? Those simple basic things. If you said, oh yeah, I saw the evaporator had a partial frost pattern, I got this much amperage on the unit, I tapped into the low side, I got this much on my low side, then the guy gonna say, well, this person's a technician, they're not a low-end, high-end technician, but they can talk the talk, that you have to speak the language. And when you speak the language, people open up to you. If you talk and like, well, check amperage, how do I do that? They're not going to be open to helping you out. So you have to learn the basics.
facts.
Yeah, sounds reasonable. Yeah.
Yep, that was a great question, man. So like I said, anything else, Mel?
You know, I can't, well, yes, one thing, Richard, do you, you're not in the field too much more any of these days, right?
I don't run too many calls only because I have two businesses and a full-time teaching job. So I
Yeah.
don't even have time to go in a truck that often.
Well, let me ask you this. When is the last time, if you can remember, where you were presented with an issue with an appliance and you were just totally stumped? What do you do? What did you do to work your way through it?
It doesn't happen very often. Like I had a technician today who had a problem when the microwave doors, the door was closed, the fan was running. And when he opens it, the fan stops. And you know, I'm telling him, well, that's because of the door switch or the board or this and that. And over the phone, and he sent me pictures and everything, and he tested everything that I could think of. And I told him, I says, you've changed the board, you've changed the door switches, you checked the door switches being activated. I can hear you test it and ohm it out. You're checking from the board, the wiring and everything. I said, I can't think of anything else. So that happened to me today. And now maybe if I was there,
Yeah.
something might be presented to me. I know, and this will also piggyback onto your other question. You know, when I first went into the field from school, I learned mostly on Whirlpool machines. I didn't have as much diverse machines that like my program has. I made sure that I had 10 different washing machines these guys worked on. I went to work for Sears, which was mostly Whirlpool products. So I went to a place I was comfortable. And I left and I went to a company called BrandSmart, which was like Best Buy, where they sold other brand appliances. And I saw Admiral, GE, Magic Chef, Daewoo, and I was like, I was in culture shock, you know, I didn't know where to go. But, you know, again, I reached down in and said basics, but sometimes even now when new product comes out, I think I know the whole machine just by looking at the diagram. But some things I have to like say, you know, what is a turbidity sensor? I never heard of that before. And I started learning the internet and searching it and calling people I know and asking them just like you guys do is, hey, have you ever heard of this before? And, you know, now I teach turbidity sensor does this, you know? So it happens, not as often as it used to, but, you know, you got to reach out, and get help. You know, you can't do it on your own. Don't, I was talking to Miss Ward earlier. I still got to continue to train even now because I'm teaching it and because I have people working in the field. I need to stay on my game. I'm going to do a video on some digital refrigeration gauges. Brandon and I at TMM did a class on sealed system, and I had bought these brand new yellow jacket digital gauges, and we're pulling a vacuum on it, and the gauge says minus 14.7. And I'm like, well, maybe the vacuum pump's bad. You know, it's supposed to be a 30-inch vacuum. And we tried another vacuum pump and tried another vacuum pump, and it's always going to 14.7. And so I went and read the specifications on it, and it wasn't 14.7 inches of vacuum, mercury vacuum. It was minus 14.7 PSI G. The gauges didn't say it on the gauges. It just said minus 14.7. So I'm looking for a 30-inch vacuum.
Okay.
And then I looked at the specs on the website for the gauges, and it said PSIG. And so I did some research, and that is equivalent to a 30-inch vacuum.
Huh.
Mercury vacuum. So when you're using a regular gauge, it's called compound. When on the low side goes above 0, it's PSI. When it goes below 0, it's inches of mercury. And the digital gauges are only in PSI. So I have both gauges, and maybe Friday I'm going to make a short video and explain how the two gauges work and the difference between the two. I just learned that in the class. While I was teaching the class, I had to learn it. So stay on your game, ask the questions, don't ever give up, and have people in your corner. That's important.
Exactly. I wholeheartedly agree.
That's
Definitely.
value. That's value for everybody. Take that, you know? Yeah.
Exactly. Well, it's definitely has been a phenomenal interview. And I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us tonight. Richard, I'm sure I'll be revisiting you next month because I'm sure a whole lot will come up and I'll be like, yep, let's go talk to the expert.
I'll be here to help you, and I really appreciate you having me on, and it's been great.
All right, I appreciate it, man. So
Thank
to
you.
all my solid steppers, like I said, this is our Tech to Titan podcast. We had the honor of speaking with Richard Zilka and my phenomenal co-host, Melle Manning, super student. With that, guys, you know the usual. What do I say to my solid steppers? Keep stepping and salute. Y'all have a great night.
Peace out.
Right.
Good night.